confirmed for me there really was a place called S4. Now, there's no news story prior to Bob Lazar about any place called S4. He knew about it. He also knew that EG&G had arranged to hire personnel, that if you were going to get a job out of Groom Lake, EG&G was the company that you would go through. He knew that there had been investigators at his home for the background check. You remember the guy's name. It was an odd name, Mike Thigpen. Now, how did he know? How did he know that Mike Thigpen works for a federal agency that does this stuff?
After 30 years, and this guy dodging you, I found Mike Thigpen. I found Thigpen.
That's amazing.
I couldn't believe it. He's on the East Coast. I called him. I've talked with him multiple times. You know, he won't go on camera because he doesn't want to kind of put a dark shadow upon the work that he did before. But personally, he conveyed to me that that was his job. That was exactly what he did in Las Vegas in 1989. And in fact, he remembers Bob Lazar.
The most important thing Bob knew is that they were flying something that looks exactly like a flying saucer over Papoose Lake. And they flew them on Wednesday nights. And he took people out there 3 weeks in a row and showed it to them. And at least once, maybe twice, they recorded it on video. That's real. How did Bob know that? There have been no stories about test flights of flying saucers at Papoose Lake. And by the way, that's where it was. It wasn't over Groom Lake. It was over Papoose Lake. We checked out so many details that Bob had told us that turned out to be true. The existence of S4, element 115, really did become an element years later, that Bob had been consulted by the lab which first synthesized man-made element 115. There was a whole long string of things that he knew that checked out.
These milestones along the way, no matter how much we nitpick it apart, no matter how much people don't want to believe it, the evidence that he's telling the truth outweighs the evidence that he's not.
Well, I agree with you. And if I did not believe that, I would not still be working on the story. I would not be publicly defending Bob Lazar.
What was your function working on this? You were doing what? What was your job?
We were to reverse engineer the power and propulsion system of this craft and see if it can be duplicated with available materials.
I just want to go over with you what it is that you saw, to draw it out for people, to make a sketch. As you're seeing it, as if you're there at that moment, kind of go back in the past.
It's the thing I termed the sport model. Underneath this floor, there are three large cylindrical devices. These are on mounts that allow them to completely swivel up to 180 degrees and in 360 degree rotation. Directly above each one is a small rectangular object. This is on the floor above. And these are the gravity amplifiers themselves. Looking down from the top, you'd have the center. In the very center, there is a small reactor. Surrounding this, in three equally spaced areas, are the amplifiers. So this is looking at it sideways, this is looking at it down from the top. And under these amplifiers, underneath, on the floor below, are the gravity emitters. So it's the reactor here, powering the gravity amplifiers. Gravity amplifiers output goes into the gravity emitters at the bottom, and the resulting gravity beam or anti-gravity wave can be pretty much put anywhere you want it to. There was another level up here. Now I had access and was permitted to view and look at the operation of this main level with the gravity amplifiers and the level below the gravity emitters. There is a level above which consisted of these two areas that I'm not all that familiar with. I assume these to be some sort of navigational engine. People call these large black rectangular areas on the top portholes. I believe they were some planar sensor array that just took in information from the surrounding area, whether it be patterns of stars or what have you. And there was their version of a computer or something to make determinations here that takes input from those sensors and then let the craft know how to orient itself and where it was in space. So that's what I assumed to be up there. I don't know for a fact. Again, that was not part of my job, and I was only led to believe that. The center antenna is really an extension of the reactor in the center, and that's a waveguide, which allows the emission of the gravity wave, which forms kind of a heart shape over the whole craft. That's how it creates its distortion. These gravity emitters can be swung all the way up to 180 degrees. And this allows the craft to essentially stand on two of them and hover, while this one swings up and creates a distortion in front of it, allowing the craft to slide forward. So that's how their low power mode, Omicron configuration operate. The Delta configuration uses all three, and unlike science fiction movies where you see flying saucers just flying along like that, they actually fly belly first. The craft flies along, leaves the atmosphere of the planet, it turns its belly to the destination, the three amplifiers focus in on the destination, and that's how it proceeds. So that's basically the operation of it and overall how things were laid out inside the craft.
This is an alien spacecraft.
Right, obviously.
This was
The Albuquerque Journal.
Is that your particle accelerator you had?
Yeah.
the guy that promised not to say anything. I won't say anything about the UFOs.
The article is titled
UFO guy in spotlight. Thanks, dude.
Isn't that when, after this came in there, then the fire department, police, the zoning commission, everybody descended on our
Yeah,
house?
I wanted to know. Here's lab supplier and controversy.
I don't think it's that.
So originally, the thing was supposed to be about what? What did the guy say? The article.
The hydrogen car, I think.
Well,
was,
the
or
raid.
business.
It was about the raid.
This
Yeah,
one?
that's why lab supplier and
Oh,
controversy.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the raid in New Mexico. And the guy called, he said, "Hey, I heard about the raid and all that. Can I
Right.
come and, do that?" And then he says, "Are you Bob Lazar, the guy, Area 51 guy?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't want to get into that. This is something more important." He said, "Oh yeah, we won't even mention it. No problem."
Literally, your house was taken over by a SWAT team.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't just send a letter in the mail or call us.
Right.
Have the whole SWAT team and invite themselves to our home.
Hidden things are the most seductive. Secrets reach deep into our desire. They titillate and torment us, like a ticking clock or a distant alarm with no origin. They agitate us and force us to react. They endanger our complacency. There is a missing element to your faith, but that's the nature of faith. That there is something out there that offers the promise of salvation.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. At the tone, please record your message.
Hey, Jeremy, it's Bob Lazar. Listen, I have something to ask you. Something's really come up that's important. If you would text me and let me know when is a good time to call you. I don't want you to call me. I just need to run something by you. Okay? Thanks. Bye.
Alright, so the only record of this is going to be on the audio on this one file, and then this video clip. I'm not going to cut it, I'm going to let it run.
Understood.
Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to encrypt it, and I'm going to put both of those two files into an encrypted thing to not be touched unless we decide it should be touched.
That's fine.
Okay, it'll be on 2 drives, but those 2 files will both be in an encrypted folder. So here's the deal. Did you ever get a piece of element 115 out of Los Alamos?
I don't know how much monitoring they do with me. I'm sure it's virtually none after all this time.
Hold on
the
one
same
second.
thing.
Hold on 1 second. Let me. Do you have your phone on you?
Yes.
Let's at this point take our phone. Let me just throw them. Let me put them in the ground over there. I'll turn mine off.
I mean, maybe this has been kept from us for a good reason. A lot of people agreed to keep this secret. So, first of all, who am I to upset it? And second of all, who am I to outthink these guys? Maybe they went over all these scenarios already and they know how fucked up everything will be. So, there's no guarantee that this revelation is going to make everything great. There's just as much chance it's going to make everything terrible, and I'll be to blame for that. They identified themselves as FBI, and they said, "You're Bob Lazar, right?" And then, one of them got on the radio saying, "Yeah, he's here." Apparently, they also had my house staked out, and they were deciding whether or not to go there. The conveyor belt of vehicles and agents and police did not stop. The whole thing was like a Twilight Zone episode. They came in and then they said, "There'll be a few other people coming here. Just got a couple questions to ask you." In a short time, the street filled up with vehicles and the building completely filled with agents. It was really something else.
Did they identify themselves initially as
Yeah,
FBI?
it was FBI, identified themselves, then came in state police and a few other agencies. I don't remember who, but there were a lot. Awful lot. Standing room only in the building. It was crazy.
Yeah, they had like a forensic truck. They had a bunch of different agents. They gridded off the building. I mean, obviously they're looking for something.
Yeah. And what they said, they were looking for some paperwork, an old order from 2 years ago about a customer that, ordered some potentially toxic material, which, they could have called for. But this was certainly way over the top. I looked up to select the right key, and they were right beside me. It was quite surprising, considering you could see all around here, and there would generally have to be a vehicle or something somewhere. But I just pulled up, got out, picked the key, and then they started talking from behind me. I thought that was really strange. Of course, it got much stranger as the day went on.
What got stranger about it?
Well, just the sheer amount of people that came, agency after agency, and I mean, they had computer experts here going through, all the computer equipment we had here. They had people sectioning off the building, labeling it in cubic meters so they can search each one. What they were looking for was just an order form. So, very strange.
You've been raided 2 times?
Twice. By more agencies than I can really recall. The FDA, to the NRC, the FBI, but they usually come in mass. and it's hard to pick out who's who.
So this is beryllium?
Yeah.
And what is it used for again?
It's used in aerospace. It's very lightweight, quite strong, and high temperature metal.
Do you think that you were shaken down? To some degree, you're being fucked with.
I don't think they're just fucking with me. I'm convinced there's ulterior motives. I firmly suspect that there's a lot more to it than they're saying, that they're looking for something else.
What they're supposed to do is tie you up, put you in the middle of the room, have everyone watching you so that you can't, collaborate a story or, try to trick them or whatnot. So they just kept us all in separate rooms. There's bomb squad, computer squad, I think they have like a biological hazard squad, hazmat squad, the full gamut, because they had no idea what we had in our shop or like what we're capable of, or are we going to retaliate or anything like that. So it was pretty much like the full Michigan FBI was here. I mean, they had the van, they had multiple cars lined up, so.
I mean, in looking at Bob's life, there's always the suspicion that there's something more going on shaking him down, because he had that experience before.
Yeah, so this is the second time that I know of that he's gotten raided. So he's always had like this kind of knowledge that there's somebody watching. No matter what he does, there's always somebody watching you. And it does have to be related to the Area 51 stuff and all that. They kind of put him on a list. I think they do like toying with him and keeping an eye on him. But I don't believe that it's like they're opening up a 30-year-old file and they're like, all right, we're going to crack down on the Bob story. We're going to find out if what he has, what information he's got. I don't think that they're necessarily doing that. But I do think that there's like a culture maybe within these agencies of they know who this guy is, and they'll have, they'll look for any reason that they can to kind of, poke him with some thorns and make sure that he knows, who's watching him. I believe that. It's too coincidental for it all to be just, just some luck of the draw, basically. Like there's something going on.
Everybody knows the story is that you got some element 115 out of Los Alamos. That's public knowledge. Something you said a while back. Do you think that what happened had to do with that?
We're not going there.
Are they trying to shake you down to find the 115 that you said 30 years ago that you got out of the lab? People are going to ask that.
Yep.
So let's just address that. If you feel comfortable addressing it.
No.
Do you not feel comfortable addressing that?
No, I don't feel comfortable addressing it. You would think after 30 years, who cares what I have to say?
I'm more convinced than ever that the key to the story is element 115. If you could get to that piece and have it independently analyzed, I think it would prove beyond all question that it came from somewhere else. We didn't make it. And it would go a long way toward establishing the story that was told by Bob Lazar as truth. So I think about that a lot. I think about the cloud chamber experiment. I get a lot of emails from people who say, oh, God, where's this video? You owe it to the world to show this video. Cough it up. And I tell them, look, I've looked for it. I've got all these boxes of crap and stuff and tape and news clippings, and I've looked for it, and I can't find it. But when somebody like you comes and talks to me about the Bob Lazar story, it gets the juices flowing again. I can't help it. I'm human, and right now I want to go find that tape.
I went through every tape that Bob had in his personal home archive, and one of those tapes on the outside in tiny, tiny little scribble said cloud chamber. And lo and behold, there's about just less than a minute of that cloud chamber test on tape. I have it.
People have been so pissed at me over the years I can't find that tape, or they think I'm hiding it on purpose, but I've looked everywhere for it, and if you found it, that's awesome.
I did. Now here's the deal. In typical, Bob Lazar fashion, There's only about a minute of it. However, after all these years, 30 years, we have some footage of it, but it doesn't prove shit because it's recorded.
I was there the night that they did the cloud chamber test. I couldn't tell you what it was. I didn't know what a cloud chamber was. This beam of light was bent, and it was bent because they had element 115 in as part of the experiment. I said, well, that's pretty important. That would be huge to include in the story.
I spent time trying to understand why everybody was saying this 115 being stabilized is pseudoscience. So I called some of the top heavy element physicists on the planet, from Russia to up in San Francisco to Washington, D.C., and I spoke with, about 8 or 9, but 3 in particular who would really talk to me in depth about it. All of them, across the board, said you cannot rule out a stabilized version of element 115. In fact, that we believe it is theorized that it, in the island of stability, that it would and could and probably does exist. So their way of saying it is, we can't rule it out. So all these people saying that is pseudoscience, what Bob said about element 115, I wanted to find out, is it pseudoscience? And definitively, we cannot rule out a stabilized form of element 115. I'm sorry, it is not pseudoscience. And after doing this research, that argument no longer holds water.
Makes perfect sense that it could be stable, and scientists have said it for a long time. So of course you can't rule it out. Again, if you want to disbelieve Bob, if you want to cross him off the list and say he's a fraud, then your research goes 1 inch deep and you say element 115 as he described it can't exist, and then move on. If you want to be honest about it and dig further into it and understand it, then you're going to find out that, in fact, what Bob says does make sense. It can be true.
Element 115 was what we would call the fuel, what provided the power for the reactor to work.
What happens with gravity and 115?
Element 115 affects gravity. Element 115 produces its own gravitational energy. It had a very specific manufacturing technique. I don't really know how that information came to be. Its code name was LA 1000. That's what it was referred to off-site. Its purpose was supposed to be, again, this is just a code and deception, was supposed to be an advanced armor. So it's an unusual material, so now we can take it to a national lab. This is LA 1000 classified material. It's a very advanced armor that takes care of all weird questions. So, you immediately start operating on lies. This fuel is in the form of just a 3-dimensional thin triangle, little rounded edges. It's somewhat copper in color, that reddish brownish. The way this is manufactured is really critical. It's not just cut out of a heavy sheet of material. A cylinder of this material is taken. This is machined into a cone. So this is, the outer part is shaved off using a lathe or something like that until you have a 3-dimensional cone. Once you have the cone, it's sliced like this. And these slices become that. Now, even this starting piece, a solid cylinder, is not even a solid cylinder. It consists of many discs stacked up. And these are fused together to produce that. And all of these steps are necessary to produce a successful triangle that brings fuel. So actually, if you were to look at how this came to be, this would actually be pieces of all these discs that were cut at unusual angles Now, apparently, if you don't do all this, that doesn't work. So, unfortunately, that's the extent of my knowledge on this. This makes no sense anywhere, but that's what it takes for it to operate. Now, with the alien technology that was present in the craft, it takes that basis, that extra gravitational energy in a small reactor, amplifies it through the equipment there, directs it through the waveguides and archways into the emitters, and allows it to propel the craft and manipulate the gravity wave for whatever use they want.
How can this be true? I don't believe a word of this. Do you expect people to believe this?
No, I'm not going to change anyone's mind. That's not my intention. I'm just relaying the experience, the job that I went through. It is a fantastic thing. It's a fantastic story.
But it's true.
It's true. These crafts came from another, not just another planet, another solar system entirely, extremely far away, and they're here.
I mean, I've been making fireworks since I was 12, and professional fireworks for at least 20 years. Fireworks are just fun. They're artistic. It's like painting the sky. Controlling a large amount of energy has always been impressive.
Since the New York Times story broke, since Lou Elizondo came forward and said those videos went public, the world is now talking about UFOs in a more serious vein. I think that's a good thing, and I think it reflects positively on Bob Lazar's story, and I hope that the world will take another look at it.
Thus, the jet bike, the jet car.
Yeah, to take, a large amount of energy, which would normally be thought to be out of control, to take that and harness it and have it do what you want has always been impressive to me.
The easy way out is to say he's a liar, he's making it up. It's hard to go ahead and accept the possibility that he's telling the truth. If I did not believe it, if I thought for a moment that he was lying about it, I'd be done with it. I wouldn't still be supporting it 30 years later.
Your life has been under a microscope. Every word you've said for 30 years recorded has been under a microscope, and that's affected you.
Yeah, of course it has. It would affect anybody.
How has it affected you?
In the way I talk and how much I do. I'd rather not, in a public forum, I'd rather just not say anything.
Why do you think people are so obsessed with every word that you say about your experiences, working
They're
at
just
F1?
Looking for a way to look for an inaccuracy and to be able to discount the whole thing. Oh, he said this one time and said it slightly different this time. Obviously he's making it up. No, that's just the first word that entered my mind. I don't put that much thought into it when I'm saying it. Look, as much as a lot of people hate it, this stuff really happened. I mean, if it bothers you, that's too bad.
I think that's just hard for people to accept. I mean, so...
Yeah, it would be... Look, I fully understand. I would feel the same way. I'm not sure I would believe my story. Boy, there's not enough evidence, but I couldn't discount it either.
The fact is, the people that know him best believe him the most. I hope that one thing that comes across in your film is the real Bob. Once you get to know him, it becomes much more plausible as a story. He's not lying to his mom and his wife and all his friends. He's not lying to the UFO world either.
You saw alien ships.
Yeah.
You worked on a gravity wave amplification system trying to figure it out.
Right, a propulsion system and a power source that's completely unknown to mankind.
And there's no way human beings could have made it.
There's no way human beings could have made it, under any circumstances, in any country, anywhere, period.
And for 30 years, you are telling us the truth.
You bet.
This shit happened.
You got it.
The fact is that raid that happened in Michigan, that's a very dramatic and very important development. They weren't there looking for records about some customer he had a couple of years ago. They were looking for 115. When you bring 24 agents and investigators and crime lab analysis, and you can bring people to duplicate the whole computers and all that stuff, they're looking for something else. Sure as hell are not looking for a minor receipt. People may not believe that 115 is real, but somebody does, because that's what they came to look for. You know, if you want to cross it off and you don't want to believe it, fine. I don't care anymore whether people believe it or not. But Bob's telling the truth. And once you realize that, it changes everything for you. It changed everything for me.
To crack a life open, and it seems, to dissect and examine its content is unnerving, like the reading of omens by viewing the entrails. We all tell our own stories. Sometimes we even believe them, and sometimes we tell them one last time. If you don't believe it, that's your problem. That's your problem. What you do with that is up to you.
Well, I am telling the truth. I've tried to prove that what's going on up there could be the most important event in history. You're talking about contact, physical contact and proof from another system, another planet, another intelligence. That's got to be the biggest event in history, period.
And it's real.
And it's real and it's there. And I had an extremely small part in it, but I'm convinced that what I saw is absolute proof of that. There is no way we could have created those systems. There's no way we could have made the discs, the power supplies, anything to go with them.
Lazar says he has no intention of going on any UFO lecture circuit. He's not looking to do any additional interviews. In fact, he wasn't too crazy about doing this one. He did it after certain unfavorable things started happening in his life, and he did it because he feels that whoever is running the show up at S4 is perpetrating a fraud on the American people and on the scientific community. We intend to have much more about this story, about the operation up there, on Monday and beyond. This is by no means the end of this series of reports. In fact, on Monday, including in our story there, support testimony from other people who say they have knowledge of the flying discs at the test site, and information from people who know Lazar very well and insist his story is true.
If indeed they have these flying saucers, George, it seems like it'd be really hard to keep it so secret.
Well, yeah, it would seem that way, except for as Lazar asked his superiors up there, they say it's the easiest secret in the world to keep. It's leaked out many times before and nobody believes it.
What's the Navy saying about all of this?
Well, of course, the Navy is supposed to have been his employer, and we have put some fairly pointed questions to them. Of course, number one, it may not be the Navy at all. Information is so compartmentalized up there, no one is exactly sure who is in charge. We have put the questions to several Navy departments. The answers thus far have been unsatisfactory. We've applied for more information through the Freedom of Information Act, and that information will be revealed on Monday as well.
You believe his story, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've got to know him pretty well over the last couple of months, and I believe he's telling the truth.
Fascinating stuff. Thanks,
George.